the confidence in playing a lot, I think, is a big thing. Like I played on a travel team when I was an underager, and it was hard for me because I didn't play a lot and I was one of the worst players. So then I went back to house league for a spring, and that confidence I gained going back allowed me to be better suited for that, next year at the travel level. And so, the development and youth experience is about playing and about having fun. It's not about just playing on the best team to sit. Kids want to play, right? So whether and that's how you get better too, is by playing. You don't get better by playing on, being on the best team and not playing. You get better on playing places. And so if you're on a worse team but you're playing more, sometimes that builds your confidence so you can make that step the next year.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Erik. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think this is great points by both of you. I think as a youth coach myself and the coaches on the line, right? It's making it fun, making these kids want to come back the next year and get better, whatever get better means to them, right? And I think it's different for everybody. So along those lines, and I'll stay with you, Erik. I'll go to Kendall next. Is from when you began playing, years ago, how has the game changed in your mind? What's different about it? What's the focus? What's the skill sets? All of it. What in your mind has changed?
Yeah, it's the speed of the game is night and day difference from when I was when I started juniors and college and pro to now. It's because there's no hooking, because there's no two-line or you can make the two-line pass. The two-line pass rule isn't in effect. It's like it was crazy towards the end of my career how fast and skilled some of these young kids were. And so, that's where the game is going. What's lacking in some of these guys is because hitting is, you get a penalty for a lot of the hits you make. A lot of them are playing with their heads down, which I've noticed about some of these young kids that I've played with. And so that's another reason why the concussions are going up, I think, personally, is because these kids are faster, more skilled, but they play a lot more with their head down. It's the awareness that sometimes they lack because they haven't had to deal with some of the hits and some of the guys that I used to have to play with when Jeremy Jablonski's coming over the boards, and he's gonna throw you over the boards like a WWE wrestling match if you do something. So that's where I think it's different. The skill level is higher, the speed of the game is way higher, but just some of the awareness and some of the heads up plays, I think, is where hockey can go back to with that high speed.
Sure. No, good. Kendall, what about from your perspective?
Yeah, I think Erik put it perfectly. I couldn't agree more. And as someone whose game is predicated on speed, I would agree with that as well. And then in addition, I think just from a landscape perspective, something that I've noticed that has changed are the amount of girls that are playing hockey. That's significantly changed since I was a kid. I was typically usually the only girl in the rinks, just wanted to do what my brother did. And now I come across so many girls, whether it's in the state of Illinois or all across the country. And, you talk about, their siblings, and some of them don't have brothers. They just started because they saw another girl playing or they wanted to play. And if you look at our Olympic teams, historically, all of us had older brothers and we wanted to be like our brothers. And you talk to our goaltenders and their brothers threw them in the net, and that's how they became a goalie. And so it's been awesome to see the growth in the girls and women's game across the United States.
Excellent. No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's fun to see. It's phenomenal being involved in that world myself. So I appreciate that. So from, we talked about the game changing a little bit. So as you're looking at your roles as player development coaches and kind of bringing it down to even to the youth level first, is, what are the kind of skill sets? What are the things that, in your opinion, these coaches should be focusing on with the younger kids as they move through the systems? Kendall, I'll start with you, and what do you think the focus should be when they're designing and developing practices?
I think the randomness. I think they shouldn't be predictable. I think oftentimes drills are too predictable, and the kids don't have to think because they watch the coach draw it at at the board and it's go around this cone, go around that cone, shoot on the net and go do it again. Well, when you get into the game of hockey, at what part of the game is predictable? There's no part that's really predictable unless you get a penalty. You know, you're sitting for, 2, 5, 10 minutes, whatever it might be. But really, continuing to replicate the unpredictability of the game in practice and making the kids think and problem solve. Whether you specifically draw a drill out that's, a little vague and you let them, solve it or, create something within it. Whether it's a small area game or it's a drill. But I think from like a younger youth perspective, I think kids skating, that's something I love. That's something I'm passionate about. But I think, really breaking down kids' strides and helping them become better skaters ultimately helps them become better hockey players because it sticks with you. And I think, when you're working with a really young kid, you have the ability to mold their skating into, what it will be when they, become an older hockey player. So I think if you're able to get with the really young players, it's fun to be able to work with them in terms of their skating stride.
Excellent. Erik, from your perspective?
Yeah, it's so for us at our level, it's hard for Kendall and I and people in our at our level trying to develop 18 to 22-year-olds to change their stride. Like she said, you gotta do that at different levels. So how can we do it? Like awareness, like I was talking about before, knowledge of the game, just giving them options and then having them figure it out. Like she said as well, I can't, tell players when you're coming over the blue line, these are the options you're going to have, because then they're not going to play the game. They're going to think of those options. Right. So you gotta give them things that, we've seen at our high levels. This is what high level players at our high levels do. And so how you figure that out in your game, as it equates to you and your speed, you got to figure that out. Now at the younger levels, skating is obviously a huge thing, and you can mold their stride a little bit, and shooting and that kind of thing. But it almost has to be individualized. Like you look at the way some of the fastest skaters are in the NHL, and you look how different they are, from McDavid to McKinnon to Taylor Hall. There's such different strides, such different body types. So I think what lacks a little bit in like the skating aspect at a young age is, you want to put them all in one box, and they don't all fit in one box. They're not all going to grow up to have the rear sides of an Anders Lee. It's some people aren't born like that. So whether it's timing then, or, coming through more with your hips, or a lower and stronger, the really good coaches are the ones that can, tell the difference and help that player, change their stride at a younger level, among their body type and type of player they are.
Jim, you're muted.
I think I can appreciate that. And I think, definitely a variety of skill levels that the coaches are coaching, a variety of ages, all that plays into it. So with that, I'm gonna lean over to Dan a little bit, and Dan, maybe talk to us a little bit about the small area game piece of this. How can we get the most out of using those small area games and to help some of the things that Kendall and Erik were talking about?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. First of all, I just want to thank, obviously Kendall and Erik coming on here. And as a youth coach myself, I think just like I'm seeing some of the heads go down and write some notes here. I'm doing the same thing on what Kendall and Erik are saying. And I just want to revisit one thing that, Kendall and Erik were talking about, their youth experience, because I think it's fascinating, where we got a gold medalist, an Olympian, and a former NHLer, and we're talking about, looking back at, keeping it fun, and that whole perspective. And Kendall described it perfectly, right? Fun isn't just goofing off. It's actually working your hardest, right? And there's determinants of fun to really make sure that, you're trying your best in that team atmosphere. You're challenged that way, which leads to the ultimate learning. So you can get into, more of those tactical things as we go through. So I just think that is such a point as, youth coaches, when we want to speed farm our development with our kids, to really look back at it and understand that, building that passion is the first part of this, and keeping those funds and thinking back of those memories as you go through, because it's fantastic. And then they both talked about the impact of those coaches that we have to make on these kids, of really, for good or for worse, on how we can impact those kids to move forward and get into more of, what, as Erik talked about, today's game, how we're teaching the speed game and getting into those small area games. To answer your question, Jimmy, when we look at that, from a coaching perspective, small area games is really, getting into that transfer of what is today's game. It's played in small areas. It's incredibly fast. There's, decision making that needs to be had. You have to look at the problem solving, the spatial awareness that Erik was talking about, even at the highest levels. They wish, we've yet to meet a coaching staff that is completely satisfied with their team's hockey IQ. It's something you're always working on to develop that at the highest level once you learn those functional skills. So I think from a coaching perspective, the more that we can, put in small area games and not just use it as, hey, it's 15 minutes of just a game. It's actually what's specific to your team's needs, the focus, and then actually look in through that activity of actually how, that activity that you're administrating within your team is, getting that skill out of your players. What is the activity asking your players to do to focus on either those strengths or weaknesses within your team, and all in that fun dynamic, which is competitive, and it looks obviously like the game too. So I think those are things getting into small area game and the benefits. And those aren't just for the youngest kids, right? We're fortunate to see at the highest levels. I mean, I'm sure Kendall can tell stories of some of the competition that they're doing in their practices, and the same with Erik. And I know the recent coaching staff of the World Juniors, they're using them heavily within their practices to really benefit the players, because it is game-like, and that's really what we're looking for. That transfer of setting those players up to be successful in those game situations comes back to that whole purpose of our practice design.
Good. No, thanks, Dan. So in keeping with that, I'll flip back over. I'll start with Kendall. The small area game concept, kind of talk to us a little bit about what it was like at a Northeastern or a U.S. Olympic practice. What did they look like? What was the focus? Did they use the small area game concepts? What are the things that were going on there?
Yeah, I think two different experiences. Typically, when it comes to the U.S. team, like the World Juniors, you get together for 2 weeks at a time. So you're really kind of system heavy. You're trying to figure out your line mates, even though some of us have played together before. So a lot of those practices are a little bit more, kind of pre-scout, trying to work on power play, penalty kill, things of that, because we only have 2 weeks and build some line chemistry. But I can assure you at the end of every practice, there was a small area game being played, and not because it's fun, but because it helps us. It's competitive. There's takeaways from the small area game. But then at Northeastern, we did once a week on Mondays, we had Battle Monday, where we would do small area games for 60 minutes, and we tallied up the points. And then at the end of the year, there was a champion. I don't even remember I don't know what the cup was called. I think it changed every year, but whatever team won. But yeah, so we did them every Monday, which was awesome.
Great. Erik, what about you and what you've seen going through your development?
Yeah, it's funny. I'll give you a little secret. Sometimes playing in the minors is a little bit more fun than playing in the NHL, and I've played almost the exact same amount of games in both. The NHL is great, don't get me wrong, but it's a little bit more low key, and you feel more like a team. You almost feel like we're a college team, because the players are so young. You're all together. And the practices, you have more time to practice in the minors. Like, it's almost a college week sometimes. So you have more time to do the small area games, and everybody's out there. Whereas, the 82 game season, it's a practice every other day and a game every other day. So sometimes those are hard, but you do them at the NHL level. But I remember the year we won the Calder Cup, it would be the same thing. Kendall said every Monday we would have, if it was a whole week long, we would have area games or games all week, or the whole practice, whether it was races or little battles inside or whatever. And we'd have two teams that the two captains would pick. And at the end, whoever won or whoever had the most points, the other team had to take them out for lunch. And so, and then again, when I was back down in the minors after my NHL career, in Syracuse, we'd start the practice off every day with a small area game, whether it was, 3-on-2 keep away or 3-on-3 end zone. It almost gets the competitive juices going. Like Dan said, like it gets you engaged for practice, right? And then you can start working on some of the other things that you need to work on. But it's just a great idea.
Yeah, no, that's great. And Erik, I'll stay with you on this one, and kind of a little off the wall question, but I think from a development standpoint, you're now, you've been through the NHL, obviously now you're a player development coach in the NHL, and you're seeing players at the highest level. What's left to develop?
You'd be surprised. It's a lot of, they're just so raw, the young kids. So I was in the minors for my last 3 or 4 years, and my essential job was to be a player development coach as one of the players, as the older guy on the team. And so you have all these high end players. I mean, like Sorelli, for example, or, Gary Onoff in Dallas. Like I played in the minors with those guys while they were in the minors, and they come in and they have, they're supposed to be really good, and they really struggle the first 15 to 20 games just because it's hard. It's a grind mentally. And so, that mental state is what they need to learn, and how to be a pro every day. And like the habits that you create allow you to get to the next level, right? Your day-to-day routine and taking your career seriously is what makes it to the next level. They've been so good for so long at every level, and then they get to this level and they struggle. And sometimes it's the first time that happens. And so it's hard to deal with. And there's guys that go both ways with it. There's guys that are so skilled that it will never make it to the NHL just because of their mindset or whatever. And there's other guys that figure it out and get that routine every day and build in those habits that, create their careers.
Sure, no, that's great. And Kendall, from your perspective as well, kind of same question. What do you both on the girls, the female side as well as now with the pros, what do you see? What's left out there? What are they coming? What do you need to work on with the highest skilled players?
Yeah, like Erik said, I think you'd be surprised, but a lot of it is also fine tuning. I'm going to take it back to something Erik said almost 30 minutes ago when he talked about his honey bake experience and being on the right team, whether he had to take a step back to go play house league to develop and get confidence to then go to the next level. It's a similar mindset in the sense that a lot of these players at the highest level have been the best player on their teams for a very long time, whether they've been the number one center, the number one defenseman. And there's a little bit of an identity crisis when you really do reach the pinnacle of the game. And I think we've all been through it. You can be the first line center on your college team, and then you get to the women's national team and you're the fourth line winger that you've never played wing before. But that's your role, and it's how do you embrace that role? How do you adapt to that role? And oftentimes it does, it takes a leader like Erik Condra on your team to help you fill into that role. It takes a player development coach to help you figure out what your identity is going to be at that next level. And I think that's part of our job. And it's hard. It's physically hard. It's mentally hard. But in order to be at the highest level, it's every day. It's not, okay, I was good at, last year and it'll get me through this year. It's every day. And I think it's kind of a consistent reminder of that as well.
No, that's
Jim, I think the best coaches are the ones who get those guys to just, everyone wants to be part of something. Everyone wants to feel like they're wanted, right? Especially some of these younger kids who are coming up now. But it's for the best coaches are the ones that give them a role or make them feel like they're a part of it, no matter how much a part of it they are, right? Whether if you're not skilled enough to play on the team, like what can you do for me? Because there's a lot of those fourth line guys that make it to the next level over these guys because they're good guys. I stayed in the NHL way too long because I was just a good guy that knew how to talk to people, to be honest. Like and I had coaches that respected that and found roles for me to be, excited about that. So those are the best coaches that get all their players involved and get all their players wanting to be a part of it.
Yep.
Erik, it's like you read my notes. I literally know the best coaches know each player individually and how they can get the most out of them. a little bit of a coincidence. Erik and I both had one of the same coaches. One of our women's national team coaches was Ken Klee, your coach at Syracuse, correct, Erik?
Yep.
And I think he honestly has been one of my favorite coaches to date, because I felt like that's what he did so well, is everyone had a purpose, everyone had a role, and your role was important. No one's role was less important or more important. Everyone had an important piece to the team, and we were successful. We lost 3 games in almost 3 years with him.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think that's just a great point, and something that hopefully the coaches take away from this. You know, if there's anything to take away, that point right there to me is, especially at the youth level, right? These kids are coming in, teams. You know, you could have a 12U team. The skill level between the top and the least skilled kid is immense sometimes, and you know, they all have a part of that process, part of that team, and being part of the program. You know, going along those lines from I think, Erik, you mentioned it earlier about the mental part, and Kendall, you said as well that it's both physically and mentally, you know, challenging. So talk to us about that from a mental aspect of the game, and how, you know, how do we help them be successful? Are there tools or the things that you've learned along the way to help you mentally get through a season?
I can start. Yeah, you mean you surround yourself with good people that, you know, they have their experiences, especially at the pro level, where, you know, everybody's gone through it and everyone's struggled, right? Nobody, you know, unless you are those top guys who've never played in the minors, who've never struggled, you know, there's 0.0001% of those guys. So everyone has been through those struggles and been through the mental grind. So you feed off of those guys, and you hope that those guys, you know, do it. And what people like, and I like, is, you know, the shows and the documentaries and the clips that are on YouTube about some of these mental things. It's crazy now. Like, you watch the Last Dance. I retired this year, and I watched the Last Dance this summer, and I was like, well, maybe I should play again. Holy cow, I was loving it. You know, those things are inspirational, and kids like that, something different and something to show them. There's books, right? Like, you give examples of, you know, pros now that weren't always who they were. You bring in somebody to talk. Those are the kind of things that people remember. Are people who've struggled, but now that have made it, right? And then they somehow have a little impact on you, or they've talked to you, or a coach brings somebody in who hasn't, right? I've made a few talks in the Detroit area. I played on this Honeybake team, but I was the 9th forward out of 9 forwards for 8 years, and I was the only one to make it to the NHL. You know, there's things, people who have been through things, you know, that's who kids look up to, and if they've made it, you know, it gives the kids hope, right? Like, oh, this guy struggled like I did, but look at him now.
Kendall, what about you, from your perspective on the mental side?
Yeah, I love what Erik said. I couldn't agree more with, like, the books, and especially now, they're, you know, kids are barely on the ice, and you know, everyone's asking, well, what can they do at home? Whether it's reading an autobiography on an athlete, or, you know, watching videos or whatnot. I always loved reading stories of other athletes and taking away from their journey, you know, what can I apply to mine? There's a lot of similarities when you look at those who are elite and what they do. There's a lot of similarities. They might have gone about it differently, but the behaviors and the details and what they do every day is very similar. But in terms of the mental aspect, and, you know, what I think a coach can do to help a player is care about them as a person first, and as a player second. When they come to the rink, ask them about their day. How was school? What, you know, get to know them a little bit deeper than a hockey player. And I think that always meant a lot to me, you know, especially I was usually dressing by myself in a locker room, and then trying to see when I'm supposed to go on the ice, because the guys are obviously in their locker room, and, you know, just, you know, coach saying, oh, how's it going? Or just asking about my day, or whether it was my siblings, or I was playing baseball, or just, you know, running in with my baseball uniform on. Oh, did you win? Or little things like that. It's just get to, you know, I think mentally it's a break, but it's also, you get to humanize the player, that, you know, they're people first, and they're kids. And, you know, you can't take everything so seriously when you walk into the rink.
Right.
So I think that's helped me throughout. Like, that was one of the big reasons I went to the college I went to, is because I walked on campus, and I was like, this coach really cares about my life, not about me helping them win championships. So he cares about me as a person first and a hockey player second.
No, that's great. I can appreciate that. I think we talk a lot about it in our coaching clinics too, that, you know, especially at the youngest levels, we're really there to develop good humans first, right? And develop good athletes and then hockey players, right? It's all a process, and developing that person and communicating, getting to know your players is so important. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I think Jim, hold on one second. I think with me and Kendall, like we're working together a lot now with some of the young prospects, and our whole goal is to have them trust us so that they open back up to us, right? So the more you open up to them, the more they're going to tell you if they're struggling, and then you can help them out, right? How are they going to know? And we have guys in Europe and we have guys everywhere. So our whole goal is to, you know, to know more about them and have them trust us so they tell us more things, because we need to know if anything's going on in their life. How can we help you out?
Yeah. No, awesome. Thank you. Hey, Dan, I'm going to flip over to you now, give the other two a little bit of a break. And let's talk a little bit about kind of the practice planning, the season, what it looks like. And we talked a little bit about the 5 elements earlier when we talked. So maybe jump into that, or if you want to feed off anything Erik and Kendall said as well.
No, so selfishly, I want to keep going with Erik and Kendall because I feel like they're one in our coach education programs that you're leading. So I love it. But it just, what they're saying with that 3-pronged approach, you know, it's so important for us as coaches. And we talk about this a lot, where it's that, you know, the human development first, right? Child development, and then get into that athlete development, and then the sports specific. And it's so critical right now this year, more than any being in a pandemic. I mean, we're more or less in the self-esteem business than anything else for these kids. I mean, giving them, you know, the things that they need, that mental side is so critical for them right now. And I think that's important when we look into this practice planning that you're talking about, Jimmy. I mean, get back, is your practices, you know, player centered with the players in mind? I mean, you have a, you know, Olympian and a former NHLer on the call here, and just talking about how critical that even at the highest levels that they're dealing with players, all players have deficiencies. And we're talking about youth players. As a youth coach, we have to have patience, trust in the process of the long-term athlete development, understand it takes time to develop that, and look at what we're trying to do. If I'm coaching 10U, I'm making drills and practice plans that are appropriate for that age group. I can't go do what Erik and Kendall are doing, you know, in those Blackhawk practices. I think that's important for us to understand, like, is it appropriate to that age group? And then can I actually relate it to them? And I love that fact that they're talking about, you know, the mental side of reading books and just, you know, that's a fun thing. I think that's probably why I love coaching 8U hockey, right? Because I get to be an 8U kid again and be like them and have fun with that. And think about those experiences because they feed off that passion. So enjoy those ages that you're coaching, and, you know, make sure that you're keeping it age appropriate and have that balance when you get into, when we look at practice planning and season planning. You know, like any good plan, you got to put some thought into it and look to execute it, and then review it again of, okay, how can you make it that much better? And I think when we look at the practice design, we talked at length already, how fun is the number one, right? You have to, that doesn't matter if you're coaching 8U hockey or if you're on the highest levels, fun's paramount to your practice. So you build that in, you build in the decision making. Are you allowing those players to problem solve? And that just doesn't start at, you know, 10 and 12. Start it with your kids at 6 and 8U. Force them into things where they're not just going around cones. Kids are incredibly smart, you know, they can, and the beauty of working with kids, they can fact check you now on everything, right? They go right to the Google. So you got to give them the why behind it, right? And tell them, hey, this is why it's going to transfer into the game for you. And then challenge them. We work into, you know, we play a team game, but we're all about individual skills and how we can develop those in those team context. And we look at, you're going to have essentially a top tier of within that team, a middle and a bottom, but how are you challenging each player? You know, each day you come to the rink and build those in and have that transfer to, is it a game-like situation? And then the important part is giving them those quality repetitions over time, that it's repetition without the same type of repetitiveness. Kendall talked about that randomness. Are we just doing block drills? Or are we actually giving more what the game's about? We're actually going to see that, you know, in those situations. So the more that we kind of build that in, I think that's critical for us. And then also the game's changed so much, so has our coaching. So we have to make sure that we communicate that with our parents you know, that they're the ally and have that relationship. It's a partnership with the parents to understand, you know, be transparent as you can to make sure that, hey, these are the things that we're working on with our team at this age group, kind of set your players to be up successful at the next age group, versus just doing a random collection of drills and things like that. So I just think the more that we can process that, and as we get through and, you know, we look at this coaching and we've learned so much about it. It's not just the what. You don't have to be an Olympian and or an NHLer to be an unbelievable coach. It definitely helps. But for us in the youth field, I think it's important for us to look at, you know, our how to coach skills. You know, how are you explaining things, you know, at that age group? Okay, so 8U kids, we know their attention span is incredibly short, right? Are you keeping your explanation short and concise? You know, get into the demonstration phase. I'm older now. I used to love to teach skating, but now I have to use, you know, the younger assistants to go and teach the skating and, you know, coach a little bit more with my mind. And then actually as the activity goes on, are we, you know, looking at the observation? Am I analyzing what's going on and making decisions based on what the players are doing? And then so I can give them the proper feedback versus just instructing our players as a coach. I think that's critical to really, as Kendall and Erik have been talking about, that relationship with the players, of getting into them, you know, trying to find out what their goals are versus my goals just as a coach. So I think those are things that we can focus on coaches and keep it, you know, all in, you know, appropriate for that age group and keep it incredibly fun for the kids.
Great. No, thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. So those 5 elements are important. We talk about them all the time, coach. It's fun, you know, constant decision-making, challenge the players, make it look like a game, lots of puck touches, right? Repetition without repetitiveness, right? You know, we're going to teach passing in a certain way. We don't need to do it the same way every time. We can hide that skill inside of other drills. So it's not repetitive. It's not repetitive for the kids, right? They're seeing something different, but they're still learning the skills. So those are cool. But Erik and Kendall, I'm going to flip a little bit to the off ice aspect of what we do from a development standpoint, and kind of what do you think some of the key things these youth and high school kids should be focusing on during the off season, even in season for that matter, both on the off ice side of things. So Kendall, if you want to start.
Yeah, sure. I think you know, before we go into the off ice, I think just in general, the best teams I've been on that are the best teams on the ice, they're also the best teams off the ice. And that doesn't mean from a fitness standpoint, that means from a character standpoint, whether it's, you know, I think of so many examples. I was on the Chicago Mission boys team, and, you know, that year was a great year, but I remember the time we went to Safari Land for the locals, right? And right outside Addison. I don't think it's still there, but it was outside the Addison rink. And we went there, you know, instead of practicing, and it was like the greatest time ever. But we were so close as a team off the ice that it made us that much better on the ice. And I think that's something that coaches can introduce and influence, is the culture within the team, you know, the expectations and the respect that the players have, you know, when they walk into the rink. Are they picking up after themselves? Are they leaving the locker room clean? Are they, you know, whether you're getting on a bus, are they treating the bus drivers in the bus with respect, the hotels, and like all these little things that when you get to the highest level, like they matter. You're not going to be around a long time if you're not a good person. I mean, Erik talked about his experience as well, but I think, you know, that starts at a young age. Like, you know, we all know experiences with kids, whether they're mouthing off to the officials, the coaches, you know, the opponents, and we hear situations like that. But what are we doing as coaches to make sure we're stopping that? And I think, you know, it starts with building a culture. And I think it's those experiences off the ice that bring the kids together, that are super valuable. And then Jim, to get into your question about off the ice and more so the physical aspect of that, I think from a youth level, you know, prior to high school, for me, in my personal opinion and experience, it's go play other sports. Get out of your skates. You know, there's so many kids, whether it's private lessons and there's ice readily available here or there, or whatever the case is. These kids are on the ice too much. You know, I'm curious, Erik, to hear your experience, but you know, when I was a kid, I was playing baseball. I switched to softball when I got into middle school. And I remember thinking like, oh, I'm not going to be that, you know, I'm going to fall behind. I was playing boys hockey, but I'm going to fall behind because I'm not on the ice. I'm not doing this. And it was the best thing that happened to me was to put my skates away. And, you know, maybe I'd carry my hockey bag to red hockey because my parents were like, we're not taking you. So I was like, fine, I'll go once a week and walk to the rink or whatever. But, you know, other than that, it was other sports. And I think those other sports helped me in hockey. And then, you know, I started really lifting, and part of that was due to making the national team when I was 15. And I, you know, there was a strength coach, and I was watching all these older players like Julie Chu, Natalie Darwitz, Angela Ruggiero, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have a long way to go. Like watching them throw like 45 pounds, you know, snatches over their head. And I'm like, I don't even know if I can lift that off the rack, but you know, so like that was what really when my strength and conditioning process started. And I was very fortunate to work with Paul Goodman of the Chicago Blackhawks at 15. And he really helped build that foundation of strength and conditioning for me at such a young age. And so after working with him for about 6 weeks, I was able to, you know, take that, and I learned a lot. And, you know, I was doing a lot with the women's national team as well at that point. But for me, my strength process started about 15, and I was doing body weight stuff at 14, whether it was like push-ups, sit-ups, and running sprints, and just being like a psycho in my basement by myself. But that was kind of my process.
Good. Thank you. Erik, from your perspective.
Yeah, I think you should skate 365 days a year, and you shouldn't touch any other thing if you want to make it to the NHL. I'm totally kidding. I'm big proponent of multi-sport athletes. And it's hard because it's funny. I live in the Minneapolis area now. I grew up in Michigan, but it can get crazy here, like all year. And I'm getting calls. I have a 6-year-old. I'm getting calls that he needs to, you know, be on the ice 4 times a week in the spring so he can make the AAA team next year. And and I just hang up. I said, you're calling the wrong guy. I've been there, done that. I know what he needs and doesn't need. But yeah, the kids have to have fun, like Kendall said, and you're not going to, you know, you want them in your practices, you want them to be engaged, and you want them to be ready to play and have fun. And they're not going to do that if they're playing every single day all year. And some of the kids love it, you know, and that some of the parents make the kids love it. So I think at the younger ages, they need to be able to move the right way. And I think sometimes we have these strength coaches that want us to lift a lot of weight in single planes, right? Like a squat or a bench press or something like that. And hockey doesn't work in single planes. And you see the game, as we talk about the game changing, you see all these young, very skinny, very stable players that are hard to knock off the puck. And it's almost like a gymnastics philosophy to it. Their cores are strong. You know, they can do things in different planes, and that's really the way things are going. I mean, you need to build a base strength, like Kendall said. You have to have that at a certain age, but you just don't see the young kids aren't, you know, they're not squatting anymore because their back. I've had back surgery because I squatted too much, you know. And what do you guys want for these players? Sometimes I think in college they want to use you for 4 years, and then they trash you at the end of it because you've squatted too much and now your back can't move. So I've been a little bit a part of that, and that's why I think I've changed my philosophy a little bit. And I was a psycho too, and that's another part where you don't want to lose, right? You don't want it to be, I'm not saying be easy, because you could do things and be very hard, and you almost want, like, mentally, you want them to know that they could do more than they think they can do. And I think that's at Notre Dame, our strength guy pushed us farther than I think I've ever been pushed and thought I ever could go. But that's helped me because then I know I can, when I'm feeling tired, I know I can do more because I've done it before. But that doesn't mean I have to squat 300 pounds just to get my legs strong.
Right. No, that's a great point. And I you know, I like what you said about, you know, playing 365 days a year. And I think it's really, you know, parents have to be parents, right? Even though the kid might want to be on the ice every single day, they need, and coaches need to moderate their, you know, their exuberance about getting extra ice and getting the kids out there all the time to allow them to do those things like you and Kendall talked about, playing other sports and developing the athlete, right? And to Erik, to your point that, you know, hockey's not played, you know, in a single plane. There's a lot of movement involved in that, and those other sports can certainly aid and help in that development of those kids. I'll go flip back over to Kendall, staying on the off ice stuff. Erik touched on it from the core perspective, and what do you see? And maybe speak to it from the female side, especially too. Is what should the girls be working on off the ice, and what should their focus be as they're out there trying to develop their physical capabilities?
Yeah, I think it's, the focus is no different than if you're in the weight room with a group of guys. The fundamental growth of, girls hockey, boys hockey, it's all the same to me. That's how I grew up. So that's my experience. But, I think it, like Erik said, like I was a psycho as well. If, I was doing a squat and, I did it 200 pounds, one week, and then the next week I didn't do 205. I felt like I failed. Do I really need to be putting 205 on a bar and squatting that? Is that helping me in hockey? But, unfortunately, that's been a part of my process. It's been a part of my journey. And, through a few injuries, you learn along the way, okay, how can I be smarter? How can I be more efficient? It's been a few conversations with Erik, actually, most recently, trying to learn his ways as well. But I think for the younger players too, it's you can be as competitive off the ice as well, with your movement stuff, and there's a lot of things that aren't fun to do that I think I've definitely learned, whether it's simple as foam rolling and cooling down and doing work with bands and stuff that takes time. It might not be as hard as a 3-mile bike sprint, but it is as hard if you do it the right way. And so I think from a developmental standpoint for youth, for kids, it's making sure that they have the right people in front of them that are teaching them a solid foundation and, for their off ice process, and not starting it too early either. I think there's a lot that goes into, like we said, playing another sport, whether it's swinging a bat, it's swinging a tennis racket, kicking a ball. You watch the NHLers before every game, warming up with a soccer ball, right? That didn't just, I'm sure it didn't just start when they got to the NHL. Where did they develop those skill sets? So I think, I don't know if that really answered your question, but I think that's kind of my approach on it.
No, that certainly does. I think it's a great answer. And Kendall, I'll stick with you and kind of leaning a little bit, because we do have some girls coaches on the line, some questions around just, how do you see what can we do to help continue the game has exploded from the girls side, but in my opinion, still has a long way to go, right? There's so much more we can do. And so what do you see, what ways that we can help, promote that and grow that game on the female side?
Well, I think what everyone's doing at the grassroots level is doing a phenomenal job. I think the lack of growth is really, at the higher levels. I mean, you look at it from a visibility standpoint, and all the young girls I talk to, they ask me constantly, when can we watch you play? Where can we see you play? And given a not COVID year, I really don't have answers for them. I don't know. I was playing in this game on this day, but it's not on TV, so they can't watch it. So I think visibility is a big piece that is going to continue to help grow the girls and women's game. You saw the numbers just spike in the United States after the 2018 Olympic gold medal. You look at a lot of my teammates, we started playing because we saw a player on the 98 team. For me, that was Cami Granado. And up until that point, I didn't see other girls that played hockey. And I went to her hockey camp and I was like, whoa, okay, so girls do play hockey. At that time, everyone's like, oh, the girls don't play hockey. The Blackhawks weren't what they are today. So the games weren't on TV, talking about visibility, people really didn't see the game like they do today. So, you need to see it to be it. And I think visibility is key, but I think from a grassroots level, and all the coaches on the call, keep doing what you're doing. Keep viewing your players who are girls just like you do your players who are boys. We want to be hockey players. We want to be talked to like hockey players. We want to be coached like hockey players. We want to be treated like hockey players. We don't want to be treated any differently. And that's how I grew up. There was obviously a few remarks here and there or whatever. I had longer hair than most of the boys, but other than that, it was, I was a hockey player. And that's, what helped me become the player I am today.
No, I couldn't agree more. Again, living in that world now, and that's, that's what the girls want, and quite frankly, that's what they should we should be giving them, right? And whether we're a male coach or female coach coaching an all girls team, they're looking for those same skills, development, discipline, challenge, all the things, those fundamentals of good practice planning, and they deserve it just as much as the youth do. Erik, from you said you had a 6-year-old son getting started, or I don't know if it's a son or a daughter getting started. What are you seeing from that grassroots perspective and getting the kids to the rink? I know you're in Minnesota; it's a little different. It's certainly the state of hockey. It's a little different than it is in Illinois. But what do you see from that young level getting the kids started?
It's just like I mean, maybe I'm here. It's intense. It's almost too intense for me, and you almost feel like at that level, if you don't do everything, you're not giving your kid the opportunity that the other kids are getting, right? We have kids playing in the Edina Association, and then there's a private association. They're playing for 2 teams. You have schools here where the kids are going to school all day. They're going on the ice twice, and then they're playing for their association. It's, those are sometimes the kids love it, right? But what I want for my kids is to be a well-rounded kid. I don't know if he'll make it to the NHL. If he wants to, he might want to, but it's such a small percentage that who knows, right? And things could be all in his favor and he could never make it, or he could get drafted by the wrong team, or he could, not play the game at all. So sometimes it's a little too intense for me. And I just think back to what is, as a coach and as a father, what am I trying to do with these kids, right? I'm trying to make them better, well-rounded kids, right? And I want to develop their hockey skills as much as I can when they're there. But I also want to make them good kids, and I want to, give them every opportunity in life as opposed to just in the hockey rink.
Good. No, that's great. Thanks, Erik. I'll finish up with one last question as we get close to the hour here, and back to the on ice piece of this a little bit. There's a couple of folks asked the question around just kind of how do you teach? Is there a way to teach creativity, read and react, time and space? How do you learn that? How do you coach that? How do you get that into your team kind of ethos and what they do on the ice? And Erik, I'll start with you. What are some things that you think we could potentially be doing, or that you've seen in your growth to develop those kind of things?
So creativity is a player who, uses some kind of move to beat another player, right? And then he gets a shot of dopamine in his head, and then it's like a spark that goes off and says oh, I can do this, right? I can make this play, and it's good. So you got to have drills or things where the players are challenged by other players, but at some point they can be successful, right? You want drills that are hard enough to challenge them. And then you could give those, like I said before, you give them ideas on how to get around it. But there's maybe you have 3 options, right? But the kids are gonna, why those kids are the best kids growing up is because they were a little bit better than everyone. So they made the moves around them. They felt good about themselves, so they kept doing it again, right? If you try one of those moves and it doesn't work, and you try one of those moves and it doesn't work, and you try another move and it doesn't work, you're not going to try it, and you're not going to try anything anymore. So it's hard to have that balance of, so maybe you tell the defender to go 70%, or you make a drill where it's really hard for the defender so that the offensive, I'm an offensive guy, so that's how I think of things, is successful. Because that's the only way they're going to try things again, is if it feels good to them and they're successful on it. And I'm not saying it's easy to make up these drills, but at some point, you do drills where the defender's on you for a short amount of time, he's playing 70%, then you let him go. Or you do drills where the defenseman is at, constraint drills where the defenseman's at a disadvantage, and it gives that offensive player an advantage. And then they get hit, they get excited because they beat a guy, and so they try it again. And that's where the creativity comes in. It's from the confidence of doing it.
Excellent. Kendall, from your perspective as well, just kind of going at that, the creativity, the read and react, the kind of the hockey IQ of all this, right? And I know some of that's ingrained, but a lot of, some of it we can teach or put in players in a better position to learn, like Erik said. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think he answered it pretty well. I think what I would add is, I know we've talked a lot about, repetition and the repetitiveness of a practice, but I think there is value in doing a drill again, whether you do it one week and then you do it the next week, because, at the same time, there's the kids that are always in the front of the line, right? Like that get the drills, they do it right away. But if you do a drill a second time, the kid that's in the back of the line might think, oh, I remember this from last week, I can go in the front of the line. We talk about the confidence building. So if you can build out a drill, right, that forces the creativity that Erik just talked about, and now you have, your group that's confident week one of this, then you go into week two, you do it again. Maybe you have your whole team that's now confident, that's trying, whether to be creative within the drill, in a different way or whatever it might be. I think also the repetitiveness of a drill that is creative, that forces creativity, forces players to, to make decisions and to think about the options that he or she has within the drill. The second or third time that they do it, whether it's, after 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, as a coach, that's where you need to read and react and see, okay, are they developing, or are they getting frustrated because it's not working? And then that's where you need to adjust, what you're doing so that it's helping versus hurting. But I think he put it pretty perfectly as well.
Yeah, no, that, and Dan, I'll flip to you for the last part, because I know that's right up our alley of what we talk about in the coaching clinics. What they said, I might cut this clip and ask them for permission to use it, because that's exactly what we talk about. Dan, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, fantastic what Erik and Kendall are talking about. I think it's that whole culture, right, of allowing players to make mistakes, have some creativity, and then also have that balance, right? Where you're holding them to those constraints. I think that's the key, right? Where you're forcing something on them and making sure they're staying to that standard. If it doesn't work within that, well, then you got to make sure you hold them accountable and then change, and really let the game be the teacher. And as we go through that, to allow the, what we're doing to foster within their development, to get that creativity. So it's not just instruction. It's actually, it comes back to that observation key, right? And looking at the culture you create, hold them accountable to what you're trying to teach them, and then figuring out where's that challenge and allow them to fail, set up some success, and then fail again and go through and put that in a creative culture. I think you're going to see lots, the sky is essentially the limit of where we're going to keep going. I mean, where the players, we're talking about how they're so skilled now, but if we're allowing that kind of environment for our players, I mean, the future of the game is going to be in really good hands as we move forward.
Yep.
I'd just like to add to that too. Just one other point is that don't be afraid to tell your kids to watch hockey, right? Like, I think that's something that's underused in coaching. Like, turn on a hockey game. These kids are on their phones, their iPads, their computers, everything in between. Watch the game of hockey. That you can learn so much from watching it. And I think, I'm sure, Erik, you watched way too much hockey as a kid. I know I definitely did. I wrote every book report possible on hockey and whatnot, but I think there's definitely value to that, with the kids.
Yeah, it is. Erik, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, the awareness aspect. I talked a little bit about creativity, but the awareness and the hockey IQ. Like, if I could tell coaches to tell their kids one thing, it's to shoulder check and to know where their players are before they touch the puck all the time. Because you watch, and then tell them to watch a game and watch Victor Hedman and watch Klingberg and see before they touch the puck, or Kucherov, or, Braden Point, watch before they touch the puck and tell me how many times they check to see where all their players are at. Like, that's the one thing that, you talk about what players lack here and what makes the difference between an AHL player and an NHL player. It's awareness, and it's hockey sense, and they know where everyone's at before they touch the puck.
Yeah, excellent. Good.
Yeah, sorry, there was one thing I lost my train of thought, but it's especially at the youth level, right? Like, we're working with all the kids that were the best players at the youth level, at the college level, at the, for whatever the level is, they've always been the best. And I think sometimes as coaches, we forget to coach the best players because they're the best. And, and I don't want to say they get forgotten, but sometimes they get forgotten, but it's to force that creativity out of the best players, for example, I'll just, if I'm a fast player, right, I can go down the ice, skate around everybody, shoot and score. Great. But is that really helping the development aspect of my game? So how can you, we talked about individual players, making sure you're getting the most out of each player in terms of what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, within each drill that you're creating, because each player has a different strength, a different weakness. And how can you exploit those within the drills so that you're getting them, you're really making your entire team better. And that's just something that I've seen throughout my career.
No, great stuff. Well, I know we're at the top, a little over past the top of the hour. So Erik or Kendall, if you have anything, I don't know. I know I've worked with Kendall before. I know she has notes in front of her and she's prepared always for these things. So anything that you want to say in closing to the coaches? No, good.
Thank you for having us.
Erik, anything?
I don't think so. I think that's it. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, thanks everyone, and that's on the line. I appreciate it. We'll be doing another one next week with the goalies. You'll get an email from Gretchen on that to sign up and register for the goalie one as well, and keep abreast of your social media and emails for future ones the rest of the month. So I really appreciate both Erik, Dan, and Kendall for being on tonight and taking some time with the coaches here in Illinois. So I appreciate it. If I could ask you guys just to hang around, we let everybody else go, and we'll close up. So thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you take us into a group?
Kleiner, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, nice job, guys. Thank you guys very much. That was wonderful.
Thanks, Rob. Just hang on one second. Gretchen's gonna
What's up,
put us
Rob?
in. Go ahead and join the group that Gretchen.
Spencer, how are you?
Good, buddy.
Good to see
Getting
you.
ready to go back to the ice.
Yeah, I hear you. Happy New Year to you too.
Yeah, you as well, bud. Are you guys heading back or?
No, it's not looking good.
Yeah, hopefully hopefully they get together this weekend, or I don't know.
It's I don't know what's going to happen, but they pushed it back at LFA till probably middle to end of this month if we're lucky. So it's
Yeah.
time's running out.
Well, best of luck, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Alrighty, take care. Good to see you.
Spence, good to see you, buddy. Greener's on the call too. Same with Chromie.
What's up?
Hi,
How are you? Hi, guys.
I just look forward to it all day just to see you.
Oh, you're being too kind there, Chromie. I like it. That's all right. Good to see you, buddy. Nice way to start off the new year, though.
That was awesome, man. I tell you, I thought, did you guys slip them notes? That's how good
Yeah.
that was.
You know what?
Fantastic.
Well, they're professionals, right? They're in it, but it's so cool because it hits home where, I mean, they're dealing with the best of the best, and those players still got deficiencies, right? The same stuff. We're just dealing it at a younger scale with the youth kids, and we got to figure out how we can relate to those kids, right? And be patient with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
I took away a lot from that just for me as coaching at an older level.
Yeah.
You got a page of notes and all good
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, it just, you see how important in teaching today's athlete, right? How much they're communicating with those players, where that old school mentality of, hey, coaches coach, players play. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
there's NHL coaches flying out to go see their players before they bring them into the organization, right? Like how they work together, how they actually can get on their goals, why we want to be those programs. That was probably 10 years ago when I was actually 15 now, when I was in Sweden. I didn't understand it when I first started coaching junior hockey, where, the coaches were always taking the players into their office, talking to them. And I was frustrated the first 2 months. Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't get it. Like, it just wasn't part of our makeup. Right. And then 2 months into it, now when the kid, when he's not necessarily showing up for practice, he's got other things going on at home, and, and he's skilled beyond belief, but doesn't really give a shit about hockey. You can actually have a little bit of relationship and then try to pull something out of them, where it kind of finally hit home a little bit. So, yeah. All right. I got to join the breakout. Sorry. We'll see you guys. Good to see you guys.
Alrighty, we'll
All
see
right.
you.
Have a good one. Thanks, guys.
The Three Musketeers are left.
Yeah.
What's up?
We didn't make the big cut, huh?
No,
Oh, no,
slap.
no.
Yeah. No title, no cut. Huh.
Yeah. Klein, is it the school that's reluctant to start hockey? Like, I assume the rink's being used and stuff, is it not?
I don't think the rink has been used.
Oh, really? Maybe that's part
So,
of the factor.
I
then.
talked with Darren 2 days ago, and he said the school is very apprehensive. They won't let
Okay.
him do anything, which makes me think that they've closed the rink, because why would they let anyone else on if they're not letting their own guys go?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it basically, my season originally ran from the beginning of October through probably the middle to end of February. And if we start now, what good is it?
What does it do? I know.
Yeah.
That's tough. Yeah, I thought my rink was the only rink not open. So I didn't realize that. I knew you guys weren't doing stuff, but I didn't even think about being the school rink. They
Right.
wouldn't allow others to be on there. So interesting. So
Mhm.
yeah, our rink is finally going to open next week. But they're putting restrictions on how many people on the ice and stuff. I'm like, we didn't have that when it was bad 3-4 months ago, but I'll
Did
take
you guys
it.
get this?
So,
Hang on, Chad. Did you guys get this to join?
what is it? Oh, are we joining?
We're joining, I guess.
Maybe we should.
All right, let's join.